What's up, everybody, and welcome to Justin versus the Future. I'm your host, Justin Harrison, CEO and founder of You Only Virtual, or You've Inc. Today, we're going to be talking about probably the nearest and dearest future tech to my heart. Well, not probably, absolutely, because that's what I do. That's what You Only Virtual does. We're a posthumous communications company that uses artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms to help people continue communicating with their loved ones after their loved ones have passed away. Now, we say posthumous communication, and as far as I know, that's not a term that we coined per se, but that we're using sort of in wide practice. And it's not really a market that exists yet. There's a handful of us out there that are trying to make this work and are putting forth their different versions of this. But I want to break down what this means. So, posthumous communications really sounds like we have a psychic company or something like that. We have spirit mediums that are running seances for people and things of that nature. That is absolutely not what we do. There's nothing spiritual or supernatural about our work. What we do is we use the digital information that people are constantly putting out in the world. In our case, we focus on the communications that people are putting out to recreate somebody virtually, digitally. Our focus, I'll go into our focus specifically. There's a lot of people doing various different concepts and versions of this, but it's still really new. And that's because digitizing is still very new and the internet is still very new. And generally, technology in the way we know it in terms of how much data we can get on computers and using cloud systems is still so new, and the processing power to be able to respond in real time and the things you sort of associate with communications is new. It's really new, but it's not the only thing that's new. And so I'm going to kind of start this podcast out and start this concept out by straight up going after the biggest counter I get from people. Now, there's no one that really counters me on the technology side of things. Our personal technology is patented and it works, and we've been making personas. That's a virtual personality. But what I get from people more in terms of pushback is it's unnatural. It's weird. It's not real. And if we want to talk about fear in regards to technology, there's not much more scary than the concept of death, playing with people's legacies, and venturing into sort of the afterlife or version of the afterlife, if you will. It freaks people out. And what I get all the time is Black Mirror, and I think there's a show called Upload. Roberta, is that the one everyone talks about? I don't watch that stuff. I'm sure it's all great, and as I've espoused multiple times in the first episode and second episode, we're not necessarily recording these in order. We're releasing them in order. So I make reference as if you all have seen me multiple times, but I think this is going to be our second episode. I have, however, recorded like 20 podcasts at this point, partially because I'm a psycho perfectionist and partially because we're not entirely sure what order we want to release these in. All this is to say, if this is the only the second episode you're tuning into and I make comments about like all the other episodes, it's because I really have recorded a lot of them. We just haven't released a lot of them. Anyway, um, I, despite being a nerd and despite loving science fiction and sort of science fiction's ability to predict future tech, I really haven't gotten into anything science fiction around the type of technology I work with. And the reason for that is the same reason why I haven't done extensive research on what other companies are doing in this market, in this concept, in this field either, is because I don't want any of it to tarnish or influence my process, our process. And the reason behind that is because nobody has released anything to market that is in wide use yet, that we don't really know best practices. This is such an emerging a future tech that is coming now. Like, for instance, Versonas will be live in January of 2023. And I know some other folks have, their sort of spin on it. But there's not a lot for us to reference. There's not a ton of, oh, we should do it like this because this is working so well to create authentic relational stuff with people. So before we are able to like look at what other people are doing and even share ideas with other people working in this future tech, I want to get our idea sort of actualized first, and then we go and start picking it apart as users use it and we use it, and we can sort of see all the different facets. So I'm decidedly actually a little bit ignorant about the sci-fi and other people's work in the field because, like I said, we have a very clear sort of technological pathway. We're using artificial intelligence, and I'll get to why it's so important to tap into AI when you're thinking about future communications, or I'm sorry, posthumous communications in the future. But I want to circle back to, it's unnatural, it's weird, it's creepy. No, it's scary because it's new. Just like sentient AI or space travel, it's scary because it's new, and it's scary for another reason. And it's funny, in my notes, I had actually saved this for last, but I want to open on it, because I want to frame the importance of this work, and in my hope that everybody's working on it, or as many people as possible are working on it. Um, Death is not certain. It's not guaranteed. It's guaranteed up until now. It's been guaranteed. The most famous phrase, sort of, surrounding death is nothing's guaranteed but death and taxes. Well, death doesn't have to be guaranteed, or at least not the way we understand death to be. And we've seen this in on the physiological side. I'm going to dive more into the intellectual emotional side and how we can use technology to help preserve that, and to keep those relationships going. But even on the physiological side, I mean, like 100 years ago, the universal worldwide understanding that one had died was that their heart stopped beating. Right? If you look at all this like classic literature and poetry, and his heart beat nevermore, and then her heart ceased beating, and then her heart stopped. Even like symbols we would use, like when you look at like international emergency symbols, you'll see like heart with like a bolt or some shit, or X or whatever. It's like death. Then all of a sudden somebody figures out, you know, compressions, keep blood moving. And shortly after that, they figure out defibrillators, that, wow, we could jolt a heart back to life. Then they figure out pacemakers. You can actually insert a piece of machinery next to somebody's heart, and it will zap it periodically to keep it in rhythm. Humans have been around for 1,000,000 years in our current physiological form. And for 99.99999% of that time, having your heart stop was guaranteed death. You knew someone was dead. That was it. Game over. And same with breathing, right? Going back to like the literature and historical, she drew her last breath and he never breathed again. Well, whatever. If somebody ceased to breathe, that was like it. That we were done. And then medicine advanced to a place where it was like, oh, we don't need to, actually, as it turns out. But you keep going back further and further in time, and now we're probably a little bit too far removed from this. But I guarantee you that in caveman days, in hunter-gatherer days, we shouldn't say caveman days. I think very few humans actually lived in caves, by the way. I don't think there was a lot of people. I think it was one of those, I think we found a bunch of cave drawings and just sort of automatically assumed it was like somebody's living room. But I think it was more like people sort of passing through as they were following herds and things of that nature. They drew some shit because this was the one time they were safe for the day and it was quiet and they had a fire going. Anyway, back to hunter-gatherer days. If you lost a limb, you were probably dead. I mean, it was like probably 99% chance of death. But this is a group, these are individuals that have to keep moving. Let's take the blood loss factor away. Most of the time you bleed out if you lose a full limb. And they didn't have the understanding of how to stop that, right? They didn't make the connection, tourniquet this or cauterize that. If a tiger pulled your arm off, even if you got away or chased the tiger away, the one who lost their limb was dead. Now, of course, for most of recorded human history now, we know that that's not a death sentence, right? The aforementioned cauterization and tourniqueting, and you know, I think cauterizing was probably the go to for a really really long time. I'll have to ask historians about it, but you know, I say that just because sewing and the sterilization after the fact probably wasn't good enough for a really long time. And as people started understanding about infection and how to counter that, and like there was just so many things that happened that used to mean death. And what's weird is we have no problem accepting that that doesn't mean death anymore. So why are we so married to this idea of death having to be guaranteed? And I think this will make some people uncomfortable, and I and I almost made that mistake of referencing all these podcasts that don't exist for you all. But joining me now for probably the second time, you will soon learn that making people uncomfortable isn't a big concern of mine. I'll say what I think, and I will say things that are true. But if you take sort of the mythology, we'll say that. I don't want to target anybody in general. I don't want to target organized religion or spiritual people or whatever. But when when you take the mythology, whatever your mythology is out of it, whatever this concept that there's something extra to being a person, and I did talk about this fairly in depth about biological imperatives. When you go back to the fact that, a human being is an organic creature that has evolved, and we evolved from the same thing everything else did. And at our core, that's what we are. Now we just happen to have a bigger processor. The human brain is a really fast, really quality processor. So we conceive the world differently than single cell organisms or dogs or even chimpanzees. But as you work your way down the evolutionary ladder, there's not these massive differences, and there wasn't this moment, and again, it's going to make some people uncomfortable, maybe angry. There wasn't this moment during the evolutionary process where some sort of divine being injected spirits into all of us. And if we just evolved with spirits and that was all sort of part of, God or, whomever's plan, heaven's pretty fucking crowded. I'll tell you that right now. Every living creature on this planet, and we're going to do a space episode where I just talk about the expanse of the universe and the likelihood of so much life, extraterrestrial life, just because of the vast amount of planets and stars. But heaven's a crowded place. It's gonna have to be pretty big, or just selectively, like this divine entity just sort of like was like, you guys, universe has been around billions of years. These ones, though, these are the ones. And that's fine if you believe that. I have no judgment call about that. And in fact, none of the technology or anything, like technology and science, doesn't have to be in contrast to spiritualism and mythology. Because at the end of the day, even if at some point, God or spirits or sort of whatever people are espousing as being supernatural, or at least super outside of our observation right now, it still doesn't conflict with science. It's okay. These things can live in sort of harmony. The only time I think that oh, and to why I say mythology is because, even the Bible is mythology at this point, right? I mean, it's been retranslated. Myths by definition are sort of like I think everybody automatically takes their false by virtue of the fact of calling something a myth. That's not true. That's not what a myth is. A myth is essentially a story or a narrative or information that has been verbally passed or written, you know, about so many times and for so long that you can't go back and sort of definitively prove it anymore. And that's just sort of the nature of human society, right? I mean, ancient Egyptians, their culture is mythology at this point. We have no fucking clue. We can ascertain bits and pieces and sort of, but we don't know. We really don't. It's been told and rewritten so many times. What's interesting is now we've entered a place where in an era of humanity where like everything's being digitized. But all this is to say that like religion and spirituality and all this other kind of stuff, it is mythology, right? It's most of it is based in sort of ancient or very old practices. It's been passed, the stories have been passed, the ins and outs, the people who've witnessed the things have been gone for so long, and people have sort of just been retelling the story. I'm not here to say it's not true. That's not my job. And similarly, in that I personally don't believe in any particular mythology, I also don't believe it's not true. I just live my life based on science and facts. If something can prove something to me, fine, it's true. I don't spend a lot of time like believing things. Like we have all this amazing technology and amazing knowledge in the world. I don't need to really waste my time believing that something is true. I can just find out if it is or not. And if I can't find out, then it will remain in my doesn't impact my life yet box. The point I'm making is that without sort of the mythology and the supernatural and the spiritual whatever, human beings are processors and organic bodies. Now, our processors, our minds, our brains are what make us so cool. And it makes up the human experience. And so I think that if we're looking at your heart and acknowledging you can't live without your heart, but hey, look, we figured out ways to fix that. Well, then why can't we recreate the human experience that makes up a person? You're born as a pretty blank little processor. You have the basic operating system on there, the biological imperatives, scream for food, scream for safety. Then we learn and we have relationships and we develop into this unique collection of experiences and personalities. And I'll get deeper into that when I talk about what I do specifically. And you become this fully formed person. And what's cool about people is because our experiences are so vast and unique, and especially as we continue to grow and become international and have the internet and all these different experiences. I mean, really, you're never going to recreate a person the same way again. Our society evolves also so fast that the experiences are just so massively different. I mean, none more present in the divide between millennials and Gen Z, right? People my age were the last people to sort of experience analog in a meaningful way. And then at some point in most of our childhoods, we switched over to fully digital. So, I mean, talk about it's like there's never going to be another generation like that. And even it's only like, what, 2 generations maybe before us, 3 maximum, that had analog, that just had it, where everyone had a phone in their house and I mean, there was only a generation before mine where most people had a TV in their house. Gen X was really like the first sort of generation where it was like guaranteed to have a TV. Baby boomers, that group, a lot of them started out without TVs in their house and then sort of adopted. I mean, be off by a few years here, but I mean, baby boomers are born in post World War II, late 40s, early 50s. Not everybody had a TV by that point. In fact, I would say the majority of people did not. And then if you go back before that, the greatest generation, I think like It was a novelty to have a radio in your house. The point I'm making, I just got off on a crazy tangent, but our world is just changing so fast, so quickly. So now human beings are very, very unique, every single person. If you look at the fact that like chimpanzees in the wild have lived pretty much exactly the same the entire history of chimpanzees, you could maybe make the argument that individuals don't become that unique because the experiences are pretty repetitive. Not the case with humans. So you have this person that's completely unique that will only exist one time. And also the same with chimpanzees. I'm just saying it's not a breadth of experience. I'm saying that if you pulled, any random chimpanzee out of history, you aren't likely to get like an incredibly unique story. They will be slightly different than every other chimpanzee. But with human beings, you could pull somebody just sort of randomly. I love this when they do you talk to somebody that's like 90 years old, it really doesn't fucking matter what they did with their life. It's crazy interesting. Especially now, right? Because of all the stuff they lived through. These people saw the last World War, they saw the moon landing, they saw the advent of the internet. Even if they were, worked the same job for like 50 years and never moved from their hometown, it's still crazy interesting, just like the mass amount of experiences that being a human being affords you. So we're cool and we're comfortable with like, oh, let's keep trying to preserve that organic vessel that carries people around. But it's weird if we want to try to preserve the experience, this vast, unique experience that made the person in the first place. Stupid. No, that's not weird. That's not creepy. That's intuitive. We should be doing that. That's what makes us special. I think people who are creeped out by that are just scared because the whole concept scares them. I want to talk about a few of the future techs. I really, Roberta, I just jumped straight into the episode because I knew I was going to be too passionate about this to be organized and together. Let's talk about a few of the different digital approaches to kind of define the death of the human experience. We'll call it that, the individual human experience. There's digital legacies. That's not a new concept. We've actually been doing this for quite a while. It's basically digital scrapbooking. And I have a friend, he owns a company, and they're doing some really cool versions of this. I really like what they're doing. But basically, he pre records answers to questions that somebody might ask. So it's like your kid asks you about your prom or ask you about your wedding day or whatever. Very cool. They've been doing this in books for a really long time. Oftentimes for grandparents, you answer the age old question so that when you pass away, you can go read it. I'm. It's fine. It's fine. It's a starting place. You know, it's definitely cool, and it's definitely cool that you can pull up a video. You can ask a question, and a video comes up. But at the end of the day, it's still a pre-recorded answer. It's finite. Somebody could spend their whole life recording an answer to every question they've ever been asked, but they'll never learn anything new. So once it's done, once the person's dead, here's their volume of work, and that's all you'll ever be able to interact with. Um, Chatbots, if all of us have been on Amazon trying to get a fucking human being to talk to when our order doesn't arrive, and they just make you deal with the chatbot the whole time. Chatbots are really cool. And I think also it's important to denote that like once chatbot is basically the benchmark of understanding for almost everybody, including people in the technology field. So that's what everyone defaults to. Oh, you guys build chatbots? No, we don't build chatbots. Oh, it's like a chatbot. No, it's not like a chatbot. And I finally realized it's like we're building space shuttle over here, but people have only ever seen cars. They're going to keep calling it a car, or people have only experienced commercial airlines, and we're trying to build space shuttle, and they keep going, oh yeah, it's an airplane. No, it's a rocket. It's different. Right, airplane. No. It's completely different. Whole different engine, completely. But that's what we're most familiar with at this point, especially when it comes to AI and sort of machine learning chatbots. I know of a couple companies that are basically building like Wikipedias vast Wikipedias, chatbots that basically draw on all the knowledge about a person and then carry on a conversation. Those are cool. I think they'll have a place. It's not what we do, and it's not what I believe is important. Again, it's not able to grow in the same way, and that's where the relationship. Anyway, I'll get to it. So hard for me not to jump because I'm so passionate about what I do. Like Alexa's doing voice replication, so you can synthesize somebody's voice and have it be your Alexa. I think. Well, I know Meta does for sure, where you have like legacy accounts where somebody who passes away, you can make their account forever. It's like a legacy account, and somebody controls it. And then I do know there's some patents and IP. I think Microsoft has one, but I'm sure Meta has multiple where there's going to be some sort of AI machine learning that allows for social media posts and things like that to continue after somebody's died at some point. Somebody can opt into that. Um, there's like artistic box that take people's work, artists that take people's work and recreate more of their work after they die. So they've seen this with writers, where AI tries to create writing based on sampling and aggregating a bunch of their writing and then intuitively knowing how to write like them. That's really cool. I think the other most common one is like deepfake, CGI deepfake. So we see this in movies, and like the famous Tupac hologram at Coachella, and Princess Leia starring in the Star Wars movies, even though she had died already. That's super cool, and that'll be really important to all of our collective work as well. So, um, but the point I'm making is there's a lot of people working on this. My company and me might be just like way more in your face about it and calling it out first. Everybody's quietly working on this. This freaks everybody out, and it's everybody's problem. Everybody has somebody they don't want to lose, and everybody dreads losing at least one person, if not multiple people in their life. It's always on the forefront of our mind, and God forbid when it happens, it is your life for an amount of time. I want to talk about like why this is so important. People are incredible. We are so multifaceted, and it's really all about our personality. And our personality is all about our relationships. Our theory, You've's theory, You Only Virtual's theory is that a person isn't just a universal personality. Like there isn't one Justin. There's a Justin that shows up for Justin versus the Future. There's a Justin that shows up with his girlfriend. There's a Justin that shows up with his mom. There's a Justin. And if you think about how differently you act based on who you're with, your personality really is different. And you're never just one of those personalities all the time. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes you had a bad day. It's a different you that comes out. So we're focused on defining the personalities between two people. So, what's my personality for Roberta? What's my personality for my mom? How do I communicate? And we focus on communications because other people are doing a really great job at like the CGI and the voice replication and stuff like that. We'll be able to partner our technology with those companies and that technology. What we're really zeroed in on is the dynamic elements of human relationships, which I personally believe is what makes a human being a human being. And why I actually believe that we don't have to accept death. Death is the absence of somebody forever. That's what makes it horrible. Nobody gives a shit if you have to get a heart transplant. Oh man, I'm so bummed. My mom's original heart isn't there anymore. Like, who cares? She's still alive. What I'm after is the dynamics between me and my mom. I I don't care if my mom has to get, a prosthetic something. I'm interested in being able to have the dynamics with her, keep her alive. So the concern with death is not like our deep seated missing of, somebody's organic body. I mean, humans individually are bummed as we get older. You can't play sports in the same way. You're not as good looking, whatever. But it doesn't matter for those of us who are connected to you. We're looking for the same human dynamic. Your unique personality for me, the way you show it for me, that's what I'm looking for. And when you die, there's an absence of that forever. And that's what's heartbreaking about death. Well, what if we could keep that and add CGI and voice replication, but we kept the dynamic, we kept the important part, we kept what made you real for me. At the end of the day, I'm just a computer observing things. I'm nature's artificial intelligence, right? I just learn new things, do new things. Well, I've learned who you are, and the dynamic of who you are has shaped me, and I get something out of it. If I'm able to still get that, if you can preserve that dynamic, well, are you dead anymore? For me. Yes, I'm not being facetious. I understand if somebody's organic body finally broke down, they're not here anymore. But if I'm able to have conversations with them and get their ideas still and laugh with them and hang out with them still, what am I missing from my human experience? And it goes beyond just individual comfort and sort of the circumventing of grief. Think about how death affects individuals emotionally, which, by the way, is a completely new concept. Yes, animals get sad when a member of their herd or whatever dies. Elephants grieve, but elephants can't sort of mentally shut down in the wild. There's still shit that will eat an elephant if it lays down and cries all day, and it'll starve to death because it needs to walk and get food still and follow water and etc., etc., not be exposed to the elements, and you get the idea. Human beings have created such a complex and biologically negating, that's a term I don't know if anyone's ever used this in this context, but so much of our technology negates biology, it negates the natural world. Again, we don't have to be worried about food and all this other stuff, blah blah. So we have like a lot of time to sit with our emotions and experience emotions in a way that other animals don't. But we haven't always, right? Like in the past, human beings had more than one child because you were likely to lose one. It's just really fucked up, but kids didn't make it. So you popped out a lot to ensure the survival of the species and your genes. We say this crazy shit now, which is absolutely crazy in terms of the human condition, which is like a parent should never have to lose a child. Dude, I hate to break it to you, but before like 100 years ago, that was the rule. You lost a couple of them in the game of life. That shit happened a lot. Now, just like a couple 100 years removed, and it's like, wow, a parent should never outlive their child. I'm like, dude, most parents in history outlived multiple children. It's fucked up, but that was just how things were. Yeah, go have another baby. We're going to need help on the farm. I mean, it's cold and dark, but it was real. You had kids to help you harvest shit. It was survival. I'm talking like, cowboy days. This was an issue. People lost more, most parents outlived at least one or two children. We're not talking real long time ago. So it's funny to me, like this idea. It's not funny to me. Nothing about this is funny. I have to be a little light about it, or else I'll blow my brains out after this episode. It's a heavy topic, but and by the way, please don't call somebody for help. I will not. Or be triggered by that. I'm a huge proponent of mental health. And by the way, none of this is to say that like the mental health work to help with grieving isn't important. I'm just saying it won't be necessary forever and shouldn't be. Going to be a lot of angry people. I mean, I can already tell. It's fine. I made a product that makes people angry. It's my life. The point is that the things that we sort of accept as true shift and change. And this is going to be one of them. What does death mean? What does losing somebody forever really mean? Yes, you lost their organic body. Do you lose who the person was? Do you lose the relationship? Do you have to? I often quip to people, somebody was like, and by the way, I hate to make fun of this because it was sweet. This individual was like, you would never be able to hug them again. I'm like, first of all, at the rate we're moving with robotics, if you had, our technology combined with, multiple other technologies, yes, you could hug them again. not them physically. No, it wouldn't be their bag of guts. It would be machine inside, but it would look like them, smell like them, talk like them, whatever. You could hug them again. But we live in a digital world. I'll probably never meet anybody listening to this podcast. Maybe we'll bump into each other on Zoom or we'll add each other on Facebook or whatever. Most of our relationships are digitized anyway. FaceTiming, texting, phone calls, social media. We're redefining what it means to be alive anyway. So why shouldn't we redefine what it means to die? This matters a lot because the toll on human beings from death is massive. It's really massive. I watched how much my mom grieved and how much it affected her when my grandmother died. I mean, it took her years and years and years to process through that. And I think it's just processing through it, right? You're never okay again. You're never the same person you were. I mean, death, like both physiologically, I mean, it changes a traumatic experience to your brain. It changes you physically, but you, depending on how close the person to you that died, that was a whole part of your personality. That was one full personality that would come forward that's now gone or not in use at least. I think that's what's really tragic about death is what happens to people still alive. See, because by my theory that you're a different person depending on who you're interacting with, if you're talking about your best friend, somebody that you've spent every day talking to and interacting with and laughing with, they didn't just die and go away. A big part of you died and went away. That person that you brought out, that personality, that goofy, this is just our inside jokes, that person died too. A part of you dies. As cheesy and sort of like philosophical as that sounds, it's actually real though, right? You really don't have this unique dynamic to interact with anymore. That's really gone now. If we could prevent that from happening, that's a good thing for humanity. I want you to think just a little bit about like all the impact death has to, from the emotional standpoint, which is, specifically what we're trying to address. There's lots of people doing cool work to try to stop physiological death. Really, what I'm trying to prevent, what my company is trying to stop or slow down, is the emotional death that occurs. And it's really more about the emotional death of the surviving people. I watched one of my ex girlfriends, her father died while we were together. And she was 23 years old at the time, 22, 23. I mean, she was a shell of herself for like a year. In the prime part of her life, she could barely get herself out of bed. It was such a traumatic experience. And she got through it eventually. But I can say definitively she was never the same afterwards. You lose a big part of yourself when you lose somebody you care about. What about people that, and by the way, my ex-girlfriend, she knows who she is. She's an incredibly strong person, very resilient, does the work on herself, all that kind of stuff. And it still took a toll on her. There are people not as strong as her who just get taken out of the game of life, basically. They can't get out of bed for years. They can never function again fully. I mean, there are incredible human beings. They may have ended up, going on to cure cancer, but then, their mentor, the person that was giving them the confidence to continue, died and wasn't able to continue giving them that boost or that support, and the person fell off the rails and stopped pursuing their dreams, and maybe they got into alcohol or whatever. I mean, there's people that have, poor, judgment calls and bad decision making and poor impulses, but there's that one person they can always bounce the idea off of before they do something crazy, and that person raises it, that person goes, they end up going and doing something fucking disastrous for everybody. And then there's just the people that like never recover. There are people that lose somebody and they never ever recover from it emotionally. Maybe they keep working. Maybe they don't become a drug addict. Maybe it's not a cautionary tale of whatever, but they just never recover. It bums me out. I went to this hang on real quick. I'll cut the coffee break. It'll just it's magic, everybody. I beamed coffee. It's another future tech I'm going to talk about. Or is it movie magic? Probably the latter. I was getting ready to tell a story. I went to this event, very cool event. And by the way, I do want to shout out these individuals because the work they do is really important. But it was primarily uh, people called death doulas and uh, the doctors that help you die. I'm drawing a complete blank. What are they called? Um, there's total blank here. Palliative care specialists, people who deal with palliative care. And everybody was really interested in what we're working on, what You've is working on. But I remember talking to this sort of main person, and she was, I believe she was a death doula. And death doulas are like doulas that help people give birth. They help people die. So it's about making them comfortable, process, all the processes you can take to ease that transition. And God bless them. Science bless them. Whatever I believe. I mean, it's a beautiful, giving, kind thing that they do. But I was talking to this woman, and she was like, it was really patronizing, frankly. She was like, I just hear so much fear in your voice. And I'm like, yeah, I'm afraid of losing my mom. That's why I started my company. And she's like, I just want to give you a hug. But it's not about this. It's natural. It's part of life. And I'm like, lady, if I was sitting here with fucking gangrene on my arm, would you just be like, yeah, just let it kill you? Don't cut that off. It's part of life. It's natural. In that voice, right? Too. That like kind of Berkeley, California therapist voice. It's just life. You just have to. You just have to accept. And here are the stages of grief. You feel angry, and you feel this, and you feel it's like fucking shut up. No, no. I'm not gonna sit back watching my mom die physically and be like, well, that's it. Just have to accept that. Maybe I'll be that last person in the zombie apocalypse thinking, maybe I'll turn out to be I Am Legend. Maybe I'm stubborn like that. Maybe Will Smith should have just let the zombies eat him in terms of his enjoyment and whatever else. Didn't seem particularly pleasant, but people are just afraid. Maybe I think a lot of people are afraid of getting their hopes up. If I don't just start accepting this and just choose blah, 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 blah. No, I read this article, and this happened like right maybe 2 years before we really got into full swing. But this guy in San Francisco, I don't know if he was in San Francisco or if the San Francisco Chronicle broke the story. I'll have to check it up. But this guy built a chatbot of his dead fiance. One of the first people to start getting that. I thought it was beautiful. I didn't think that was him not moving on. I thought that was him valuing and recognizing that they had something, they had a dynamic, they had a rapport, they had communications, they had a relationship that mattered. People are like, oh, he's never going to let go. Look, I don't think the guy's never going to sleep with somebody else again or never find another relationship again. In fact, I think he can maintain a relationship with I don't know how he built his, but I don't think there's anything weird with him still getting that, being able to pull that part of his personality. I mean, think about people you broke up with or stopped being friends with years ago. I remember not even a dramatic or sad thing, just a childhood friend, and I hadn't seen him in like 20 years. And out of nowhere, he messages me and he goes, hey, I'm in Los Angeles. I was wondering if we could grab coffee. And I said, yeah, come by my house. We'll have a cup of coffee. I haven't seen this dude in 20 years. We were children the last time we were hanging out together. And it was like, boom, just picked up where we left off. This personality hadn't come out in 20 years, this part of my personality, and nor his. And then we just found them, and boom, we were back at it. I'm not saying there's we're going to live in it. I hear people are like, well, what about somebody young that loses a spouse? Well, first of all, fuck. Whether they get back into the dating pool Again, shouldn't be our first priority. That's already horrible what's happened to them. They're like, yeah, but they won't be able to move on. Well, what does move on mean? If they're a productive doctor who's treating people every day and they have a wide social network and they've accepted being in a relationship with a virtual version of their deceased spouse and they're getting what they need and they're being fed from that in the way they need and they don't feel the need to build a new personality for another romantic partner, what's the fucking problem? You judgmental sons of bitches? What is this horseshit? It's part of nature. You have to move on. No, I don't, because I'm not following a fucking herd. And by the way, we've only had a couple of 100 years of time to sit around and be depressed. This is a fucking new phenomenon. So our ass backwards, like, here's the stages of grief. By the way, the stages of grief don't really do anything. It's just like identifying where you're at in this shitty process. Oh, sweet, you graduated to the next one. Only 9 more to go. I love therapy. I studied I studied to be a PsyD, which is a clinical psychologist. I think everyone should go to therapy. I think there's immense value. At the end of the day, it's talking. Talking with purpose, talking with a professional. That's about what we can give you for overwhelming grief and sadness and the loss and death of part of your personality, part of your humanity, part of what makes you a person dies. And we're like, here, want to talk to a stranger about it? That that's what we got. Or find somebody else quick. Get back out there. In movies, when they're talent, it seems like it's usually a wife, but maybe there's husbands in the movie too. We're like, you got to get back out there. You got to meet somebody. First of all, what a tremendously insensitive, fucking shitty thing to say to somebody. Hey, you need to hurry up and get back out there and fucking. What are you doing hanging out all by yourself? This, it's all made up. No one can break down the proper way to deal with somebody dying that matters to you. We don't know yet because it's too new. We didn't used to have time to even really be depressed about it for that long. Because you're like, oh shit, Steve got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Man, that sucks. Bummer. We got to get the fuck out of here before that saber-toothed tiger comes back. Maybe tonight around the campfire, we'll tell some stories about Steve. But probably just tonight, because tomorrow we should think about some new ways to keep saber-toothed tigers from eating us. You know what I mean? There wasn't like, now we have a lot of time because we've advanced ourselves. But it's not like, the funniest thing in the world to me too, by the way, is like that woman I was speaking to at that event that was like, you just have to accept it. Let me give you a hug. This is just life. It's natural. These are people who like, which mystifies me, by the way, completely. I look at where technology was when I was a kid compared to where I am now at 39 years old and where it will be when I'm 80. It's just insane how fast we're progressing as a species. But these are people that like sort of look around and they're like, yep, this is how the world is, how it always will be. Nothing will ever change. You got to accept it. Like, I don't have to accept shit. Shit is changing all the fucking time. And I'm fairly proactive because I started an artificial intelligence company to combat this problem. But ultimately, posthumous communications, the concept about saving people digitally, the concept about people not dying just because their organic body goes is important to humanity because humanity is getting to a place where we can make that real. My take on it, my company's take on it is it's about the relationship dynamic that makes human beings unique and human beings in the first place. Other people think it's about collecting as much data. Other people think it's about doing this or that or an image that looks whatever. We're all on the right track because we're all acknowledging that this is a problem to be solved, not a fucking problem to accept. So excuse the hell out of me, but no, I won't accept it. No, I don't accept it's a part of life. It is currently a part of life. It doesn't have to be. Just like your heart stopping doesn't have to mean you're dead. Just like getting your arm torn off by a saber-toothed tiger. Luckily, they're not around anymore. Doesn't mean you're dead. Your inability to communicate with your physiological body doesn't have to mean you're dead. And most importantly, it doesn't, it means that that part of you that was specifically for the person you lose doesn't have to die with them. And I feel like that's something we can all get behind, and it's worthy of exploring as a technology and as a solution. And I think this one is where I want to stop. This is a heavy topic for me. Just as background, if you're just coming up on the podcast, my mom does have stage 4 cancer right now, and I would dedicate this episode to her. And she's currently just got back from Spain today, right? Like almost an hour ago, and they're trying new stuff. And God bless, or science bless, or whatever you want to say. Contradicting myself here. Doctors and those that are advancing medical technology, because they're doing amazing things. And I will tell you that when she got her prognosis in December of 2019, they told her 3 to 9 months. And here we are, July of 22, and she's just getting off a plane from Spain from getting treatment. That's what you get when you accept and you don't look at solutions, right? I could have just been like, well, those doctors who are just looking around and be like, nah, this is what it is. Cancer, seen it a million times. No reason to try something else. Then we get a doctor that has kind of my personality. It's like, no, fuck that. Let's try some shit. Why not? That's what progress is about. Anyway, I started this company because I realized that the dynamic I have with my mother is very important to me. And I want to preserve that. I don't want that piece of me to die when she dies. And she doesn't want that piece of me to die when she dies. And when we start getting it down, and as I've gotten deeper into this, I realize there's a lot I have to offer to the people in my life. I don't want them to be deprived of that when I go. But then it really makes me think, if everybody that matters to me is getting to experience me still, am I dead? Because at the end of the day, that's why I'm alive. To impact the people I care about, to impact the people that are important to me. If I'm continuing to do that with or without my physiological body, can you really say that I've died? Thank you for checking out episode 2, Posthumous Communications. Psychics Need Not Apply, by the way, was the name I was going to give to this. I'm Justin Harrison. The company is You Only Virtual, or You've. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm not the smartest person on the face of the planet, so if you heard any kind of errors, please feel free to comment. As they say at the end of every offering out into the digital world, please like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up behind your camera. Give me the approving dad nod, which I think in episode 3 I expanded on more. This is the problem with recording out of order. I have all this history. You guys have you're not privy to. Whatever. It'll be funny later. It'll be cool for you guys to start getting what the hell I was talking about as more episodes come out. But I thank you so much for being here. I love to interact with people. I love to learn more. If you have insights, ideas, please jump on my socials, leave a comment, leave a message, shoot me an email, send me a telegram. I don't know how to respond to that, but it would just be cool to get it. Turns out I have a teletype inside my house. That would be cool. Anyway, thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed. Keep checking us out. Justin versus the Future.